Pam Bondi was no stranger to high-stakes situations. She'd spent years navigating the toughest legal battles across the nation, but this day carried a different weight as she entered the courtroom of Judge Howard Gates, a man notorious for his biting remarks and erratic decisions. She knew this wouldn't be a routine proceeding. The case before her was a high-profile government ethics scandal with the power to upend more than just reputations. The defendant, a rich developer with extensive political connections, stood accused of diverting public funds into his personal ventures. The evidence was meticulously compiled, and Bondi was ready. What she hadn't anticipated was the palpable hostility emanating from the judge's bench before she even uttered a word. Judge Gates barely glanced up as she approached the plaintiff's table. Instead, he leafed through a file with exaggerated deliberation, letting an oppressive silence hang over the courtroom. Not merely procedural, but intentional, a calculated display of dominance. At last, without meeting her eyes, he spoke. "Ms. Bondi, I trust you brought something worthwhile today, or shall we move straight to the part where you squander my time?" A few snickers echoed from the back, mostly from the defendant's legal team. Bondi ignored them. She'd faced far worse. "Your Honor," she replied evenly, "I believe the evidence will stand on its own. This case concerns the misappropriation of public funds, and my duty is to present the facts clearly." Judge Gates reclined in his chair, his expression one of feigned disinterest. "Public funds, is it? Because that's never been the basis for a baseless lawsuit before." Bondi's jaw tensed, but her voice remained steady. "With respect, Your Honor, I wouldn't call felony corruption charges baseless." For a fleeting moment, their gazes locked, his icy and calculating, hers resolute. Before she could proceed, he cut her off again. "Ms. Bondi, save me the speeches. Get to the point. I don't have all day for whatever theatrics you've planned." A murmur rippled through the gallery. The courtroom wasn't crowded, but those present were attentive, sensing an undercurrent of tension. Judges could be stern, but this felt personal. Pam took a measured breath, recalibrating. She understood the game. Gates wanted to throw her off, to dictate the pace and keep her defensive. She wasn't about to let him win. She lifted a folder from the table and opened it. "Your Honor, I'd like to draw the court's attention to Exhibit A." "These financial records clearly show," Ms. Bondi, Gates interrupted, his tone dripping with disdain. "Do you always insist on burying everyone in documents, or is this just your way of overcompensating?" The jab hit its mark. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The defense attorney smirked. A few reporters exchanged looks, but Bondi didn't waver. She'd learned long ago that men like Gates fed on intimidation. The only way to counter them was to stay unshaken. She paused, just long enough to make her composure a statement, then placed the folder down and folded her hands. "Your Honor, if you prefer to make this personal, I'm happy to request a recess, so we can address any professional issues you might have." It was subtle, not confrontational, not insolent, but sharp. A quiet assertion that she wouldn't be cowed. Gates's lips twitched. Was it amusement or irritation? Hard to tell, but he wasn't finished. "Oh, I have no issues, Ms. Bondi. I just recognize a flimsy case when I see one." This time, the reaction wasn't just whispers. There were gasps, a muffled comment from someone nearby. This wasn't how a judge was meant to preside. Pam felt the room's energy shift, eyes darting between her and Gates like spectators at a duel. She wasn't going to stoop to a shouting match. That's what he craved. Instead, she smoothed her blazer, straightened her papers, and met his stare head-on. "Then I suppose we should let the evidence speak for itself." But as she said it, she caught something in his demeanor. Not just arrogance, not just condescension, but a glimmer of something more, like a man with a personal stake in the case's outcome. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just courtroom posturing. Judge Gates wasn't merely being adversarial for kicks. He was hiding something. Pam had weathered plenty of contentious hearings, but this was unique. Judge Gates wasn't just overseeing the proceedings. He was orchestrating a performance, a deliberate effort to discredit her before the entire courtroom. Why? She could feel his scrutiny as she pressed through her arguments, every word met with his readiness to pounce. She could almost see it, the faint curl of his lips, the slow tap of his fingers on the bench, as if daring her to continue. She had no intention of backing down. "Your Honor," she said, her tone controlled. "These documents reveal a stark discrepancy in funding allocations. The defendant's company received nearly 3 times the budgeted amount, with no accounting for it in state records." She turned slightly, pointing to the projection screen displaying the financial data. "Now, if you look here." "Ms. Bondi," Gates interjected, his voice laced with that same smugness. "I'd hate to disrupt your little slideshow, truly, but I think we've had enough figures for one day." Bondi glanced at him, then back at the screen. He wasn't even pretending to engage anymore. "Your Honor," she replied, "with all due respect, these figures are the core of this case." He scoffed, "And yet, I see nothing that warrants dragging greater than this court through such nonsense." There it was again, wasting time. He was trying to smother the case before it could gain traction. She heard a faint rustle behind her. The prosecution team shifting, exchanging glances. They sensed it too. Something was wrong. Bondi gripped her pen tighter, turning to the next page in her file. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit a motion to." "Denied," Gates snapped. She looked up. "I haven't even stated the motion yet. And yet, I can already tell it's going nowhere." Gates leaned forward, elbows on the bench. "Let's be frank, Ms. Bondi. This whole case is built on conjecture, a bit of creative bookkeeping, and suddenly you're shouting corruption." The defense attorney, a middle-aged man in a sharp navy suit, smirked. He hadn't needed to speak. Gates was doing his work for him. Bondi exhaled slowly. "Your Honor, are you refusing to hear my motion before knowing its substance?" A pause, a heartbeat too long. "I'm refusing to entertain this farce any longer." The courtroom wasn't just tense now. It was alive with unease. Eyes flicked, heads turned, reporters scribbled faster. Bondi caught the gaze of a juror, a woman in her 50s in a dark blazer, her brows knitted, lips tight. She wasn't alone in noticing. The trouble with arrogance is it draws attention. Bondi squared her shoulders. "Very well, Your Honor. Then let's move to the next piece of evidence." She turned back to the screen, advancing to the next slide. "This document, secured through a subpoena, shows that, Ms. Bondi." The tone was different now, sharper. She stopped, looked at him. Judge Gates was no longer lounging back, no longer wearing that smug mask. His hands were clasped, his mouth a tight line. Something had shifted. Approached the bench. It wasn't a suggestion. She hesitated, then set her papers down and walked forward. The courtroom fell silent. At the bench, he lowered his voice, just enough for her alone. "I'd strongly advise you to rethink the path you're on, Ms. Bondi." She tilted her head slightly. "Pardon me. I'm saying," he murmured, "some battles aren't worth fighting." She let his words linger between them, then leaned in, just a fraction closer. "I don't frighten easily, Judge Gates." A muscle in his jaw flexed. She turned and walked back to her table. But that exchange confirmed everything. That wasn't just a flex of authority. It was a warning, a thinly veiled threat cloaked in judicial weight. She sat down, her mind racing. Gates wasn't just prejudiced. He was shielding something, or someone. She neatened a stack of papers, keeping her face impassive. The prosecution team beside her shifted, waiting for her cue. She gave none, not yet. Instead, she raised her chin and faced the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to continue presenting my evidence." Gates didn't reply immediately. He let the silence stretch, as if weighing how far to escalate. Then, finally, "Proceed, but make it quick." Bondi didn't acknowledge the barb. She reached for the next file. This document is a contract between the defendant and the city's planning board, detailing proposed project costs. You'll see the listed expenses total just over $2 million. She paused then, with careful precision, placed another sheet on the projector. However, this internal ledger from the defendant's company shows the actual funds transferred were nearly twice that sum. She placed a third document down. And here is the approval signature, authorized by. She paused, letting the moment's weight settle. Judge Howard Gates. The courtroom didn't just shift, it fractured. A wave of movement, eyes darting, pen scratching. The defense attorney stiffened, his smirk gone. Judge Gates, he didn't stir. For the first time since she'd entered, his face was unreadable. Bondi let the silence linger a moment longer, then pressed on. Your Honor, would you care to clarify why your signature appears on an unauthorized financial transaction tied to the defendant? It was a calculated gamble. She didn't have the full picture yet, but she had enough to ravel the foundation beneath him. Gates finally moved, shifting in his seat, fingers pressed together, knuckles palling. That document, he said slowly, is inadmissible. Bondi tilted her head. How so? It was obtained improperly. She let that land. Your Honor, this document was subpoenaed by my office. His nostrils flared. Then it was mishandled. I'm ruling it inadmissible. It will not be considered by this court. The shift wasn't just in the gallery now, it was universal. The jury, the stenographer, even the bailiff, everyone was watching. Bondi crossed her arms, her tone composed. You do realize this is a public hearing, correct? That the press is here. That every person in this room just witnessed you dismiss critical financial evidence without justification.